Welcome back to another episode of Season 5 of the RAG podcast. As you guys know by now, this is the #1 podcast across the recruitment sector globally. And we've always been on a mission to help recruitment agencies grow by interviewing founders and telling their stories of success from startup all the way to scale up and exit. Well, this season we're a little bit different. How do you, as a recruitment leader and founder, maintain your family and friendships whilst being the best person at work? How do you stay physically fit mentally and emotionally? And how do you find time for yourself in the madness? How do you find time for self-interest, for hobbies, and self-improvement? Well, to help you with this, I'm going to be interviewing someone every single week that can demonstrate experience in one or more of these areas. So I'm going to talk to recruitment founders and also some experts from outside the industry who can deep dive into things like relationships and health and well-being. So sit back, relax, and I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast. Today, I'm excited as always. Yeah, I always say I'm excited, but I'm really excited. It feels like the summer's coming in the UK. The weather's getting brighter. There's still positive signs across the recruitment market, which is always good. And I've got another wicked guest. So today, I'm joined by DanTaylor. Dan is the MD of Morgan Hunt. Some of you might have heard of Morgan Hunt. They're a sizable organization, 150 members of staff across the UK. They specialize in public sector recruitment on a mission to be the UK's leading public sector recruiter across multiple areas and divisions. Now, what's interesting about Dan is he's not the founder. Okay, he works for the founders directly, but he's what I'd call a recruitment in-trepreneur. You know, he's that guy that has started his career at Hays, done a 15-year stint at Hays, worked his way up into all sorts of roles and officially solved constant problems. He then joined Morgan Hunt and worked his way up pretty quickly to be in the top of the tree, the MD. And now he's gone through the COVID pandemic. He's running a 150-man business. He's got so much value to offer, but he's also an inspiration to the fact that not everyone needs to start a recruitment firm. The RAG, I think, often promotes growth in a way that means the only way to be successful is to start your own in your underpants. The truth is you don't have to sit there in your back bedroom. You can go and work for somebody else and work your way up to the top and still make that huge financial, you get that huge financial reward, but also have that feeling of an entrepreneur. And he breaks all that down in today's episode. So I'm super excited for that. Let's get into today's show. Without further ado, Dan, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Hi, Sean. Nice to be with you.
Pleasure to have you on, mate. I always say this, but I've just given a nice introduction, a very, very vague introduction to you. And we only spoke recently, so I don't have that much knowledge about you and your role, only what we spoke about on the initial conversation. For everyone, including myself, the listeners' benefit, could you give us an overview of who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I'm Dan Taylor, and I'm the Managing Director of Morgan Hunt. Mm-hmm. In terms of the Managing Director, it's my name over the door. I report directly into the owners of the business, but I'm supported by an executive and a director team. We're a business of 150 people, and we focus on the UK public sector market. Wow. That is our background. That's where we come from. And we are specialists in a number of niche disciplines across the public sector.
Right. Big role, 150 people.
Yeah. It has been bigger at times. We are coming out of the pandemic. We used the pandemic and lockdown in particular to investigate every single part of the business and really identify what was important to us and where this business should go and how it should shape up for the future.
Yeah.
And during that period of time, we did virtually everything. We rebranded, built a new website, new CRM, focused on new businesses. We opened up in Scotland for the first time. We opened up our IT offering for the first time. So lots and lots. We brought a new director team into the business. And all this change happened under the pandemic. So it was quite a interesting, challenging, and now rewarding time.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm going to ask you that question now before we even go into the past, because we will. Would you change the pandemic? If you could go back and stop the pandemic from happening, would you stop it?
Right. I think it was really good for Morgan Hunt in terms of a business point of view, because it allowed that focus and it allowed us to really put every aspect of the business in the crosshairs and evaluate it and do the right thing by that business. Clearly, the pandemic was not good. You know, a lot of people had, you know,
And look,
very difficult
we're
time.
not. That's not what I'm trying to say. You know, I'm talking about from a personal business perspective. Would you have? Because we were all, I think, a lot of businesses were economically and you know financially in a really good place in February 2020.
Yeah,
you know, we were all. I remember it was a good start to the year, record year. Everyone's talking record years, and then it fell off a cliff pretty quick. So yeah, if we take the health side, which is, you know, obviously that we would never wish that, but from a business perspective, I wouldn't change it. Like I'm really pleased and proud of how our business has evolved. So would you agree that it has been a good thing for the company?
100%. We've completely reshaped, remodeled the organization. We've focused around the productivity of the individuals we've got in there. And a business like Morgan Hunt, we are only as good as the people we employ. And it allowed us to make sure we're putting those guys and the company ethos and what the company is all about front and center in it in terms of everything we do.
Makes sense.
It was really good from that point of view. Could the pandemic be managed a lot better by, you know, I think the lockdowns were a dreadful sort of, I mean, let's go back. So March 2020, it wasn't great. Yeah, nobody knew what was coming. And we had to, and governments were put in very difficult situations. But I think the ongoing nature of lockdowns was disruptive after a period of time. But in terms of Morgan Hunt, it really focused us on what we wanted to be and where we wanted to go.
Yeah, totally agree with that as well. I think a lot of people I've interviewed would agree with that. Right, let's go back then. So you started your recruitment career, according to LinkedIn, is it 1996? Is that right?
Yeah, January 1996.
Wow, just before Euro 96. What a year.
It was amazing. What a great time to be alive that was.
No,
that late 90s period.
I was only 10 years old. I remember it. I was only 10.
It was fantastic.
What a year. What a year. The weather, was it, am I remembering the summer was pretty good weather as well? Like,
it was,
felt like a warm summer,
Every England game was played in sunshine.
It was. Paint the picture. What was your life like back then as a human? Like, where were you in life? What was the situation for you?
Okay, well, there's quite a story there. So I had just finished up, I was working in 1995 in a country house action holiday adventure resort in the Wye Valley. I was in the middle of nowhere, and it was my job to meet guests, entertain them, and arrange activity programs over the period.
Sounds quite a fun job.
Yeah. And I found myself out there because a few things had not worked out in my life. Mainly, I was a drummer in a band in the 1990s, and we were hoping desperately to get signed, and we weren't, and the bass player left, and I had to go and off and do something different. So you weren't expecting that, were you?
No, it's all coming out now, Dan. Are you still? Do you still have any drumming? Like, do you still practice and do it, or?
I still gig. Yeah, I was gigging last Saturday, and I'm gigging this Saturday. Very different, but
out of a band.
A different band. I now play, much to my embarrassment, in an 80s tribute band, which is not my sort of chosen form of music. But I bloody love playing the drums, and I love playing the drums in front of people. So, that's
What's
good.
the name of the band? What's the name of the band?
Epic 80s. If anybody wants to book us for weddings, you know, birthday parties, get in touch.
Where are you based again?
We're in Brighton. Yeah.
But so look, anyone on the South Coast, there's got to be a lot of people who listen to this that are like a bit of 80s music, a bit of Europe. All I think of the Final Countdown. That's all that goes through my head. I think that was the 80s anyway. It was very little. Anyone wants it? Epic 80s, get involved. But
definitely.
So you find yourself, did you finish up with that business, that job then, and then you fell into recruitment? Is that the classic story?
Well, a very good mate of mine is a guy called Darren Montague. We've been mates since we were 16. He gave me a call and he said, look, I'm the manager of what was Montrose, which was part of Hayes at that stage, Brighton office. You come in, replace me as the junior person. Everybody moves up one, and I'm moving up to London to pick up a role in London. And it was like, okay, let's have a look at it. So I went to the various interviews, managed to get the job. And in January, I find myself as the new boy in the Montrose office in Brighton, which was 6 people. I was the only one who didn't smoke at my desk. And because I was the new boy, I had to sit on the broken chair. And that was my introduction to recruitment.
Welcome.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And it was a real kind of shock to the system. You know, we started at 8 o'clock every morning. I can remember getting pinned against the wall one day because the day after my birthday, I'd turned up 5 minutes late. And we worked till the job was done, and it was a very different time then, but it was great for me, and I worked with some brilliant people.
What did you actually recruit?
So it was construction industry recruited for, and I started off on the blue collar desk and then moved on to construction management as my time went on. But yeah, that's where I started, and it was fantastic. Wonderful place to be.
How did your career evolve? Were you a natural recruiter, or did you quite quickly go into more of a leadership position?
No, I was comfortably the worst recruiter you've probably ever met for the first 6 months of my life. And then something clicked. And a brilliant manager I had on a day-to-day basis, a guy called Trevor Mills, who I'm still in touch with, literally kicked me into becoming a good recruiter. And then I kind of got it, and everything kind of clicked into place after 6 months, and I just took off. And I was a strong recruiter there through my period there. But my passion always was about how could I get into management? How could I drive this business forward? Use my passion and my skills in sort of working with people to take.
Where do you think that comes from? Like, because I'll be honest, I didn't have that. I didn't have that passion of managing people. It was one of them things where I think I was quite a natural recruiter, and I quickly picked it up, and I performed really well. And my bosses were like, let's replicate him because he's a bit of a flight risk. He's billing, a lot of money. At one point, I think I was billing a third of the company's revenue, and they're like, "Wow, he's a flight risk." And I think they saw I was quite a good talker, a good communicator. I could probably get people on board, and I did all right. I was decent manager. I wouldn't say I was the best. Where does that passion come from for you?
I don't know. It probably comes from my mum more than anything else, because she's very passionate about people and cares a great deal about people. I think it's the most beautiful part of my job is taking people and possibly putting on the similar journeys to the one I went on, not being very good, and how you work with those people and take them forward and develop them over a period of time. It's just a fantastic joy to be able to see that. And I'm delighted that I'm still really grateful to the people who've made a big difference in my life in terms of my career. And it's great when you see younger people actually reflect that back on you as well as time goes by. The longer we're in this industry, there's more and more people who you kind of get close to over that period of time. And if you've had an influence, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's the most rewarding thing of this job for me.
You are right, though. Like anyone who's ever been on the show, anyone I've ever dealt with, they'd all be able to cite a couple of names that made an impact. People that genuinely. Like if I look at the start of my career, there was two people in Australia, Helen Mackay and Hamish Gordon, that I worked for, and Hamish works for LinkedIn in Sydney, I believe, and Helen went off to Singapore, and I think she still works in the industry. Incredible people that were inspirational. And then when I got to London, I worked for a lady called Claire Eads, who was, in my opinion, still probably one of the best recruiters I ever met. And she just dragged me along and got me to a standard that I became really good. You never forget those people, do you? Like you don't, and you'll take them forever. You'll always be grateful to those people.
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize it, that, I think sometimes we can lose it. So it's all about us. We're just natural geniuses, but it's not. We're the sort of some of the people we interact with on a close and daily and regular basis to drive us forward. And, this position I'm in and the life I lead is really down to some brilliant people who were so instrumental to me, particularly as a young guy, in 1996,
What age were you when you got into recruitment then?
I was 25.
Right. Same as me when I got in. So you were looking at LinkedIn. You're at Hayes for 10, 11 years or so?
15 years I did at Hayes. Yeah. Right. So I think the first thing is, back in the 90s, it felt like we had the wave behind us. There was very little in terms of competition out there. This was a coming industry. When a lot of my sales in the early days was not why you should use us over another recruitment agency. It was why you should use a recruitment business in the first place.
Yeah.
Concept sell, we call it. This is the concept we're offering. This is the best way to draw peaks and troughs graphs. And this is where your staffing is. And we help with the peaks and all that kind of stuff. And that was great. So it was great. And that kind of roar of everything was moving forward. The economy was moving forward. We touched on it earlier. The mid and late 90s were a great time to be alive. It was all really happening. And then we had a bit of a bump in 2001 after the World Trade Center disasters. Yeah. But it was a tiny thing, and we quickly bounced back. And then we chugged on forward again at a rate of knots till 2008 when the recession hit. And things for me kind of changed there. There was a lot more competition out in the marketplace. A lot of that competition we had bred ourselves.
Yeah, people spread out and left, and
yeah. And then there wasn't that kind of, entrepreneurial excitement, which I'd enjoyed at the first half of my career. I think some of the kind of close-knit family nature had gone from it, and it kind of felt it was a bit congealed and a bit kind of MBA program says this, etc.
Really?
And I was losing my passion for it.
Where were you in terms of the role at this point, 2008?
So in 2001, I left the Brighton office and worked across the South Coast, and I moved to London. And this was the start of something that's been a regular theme in my working career, is being given opportunities in roles where there's been some significant performance issues, and going in to do kind of turnaround type events in terms of the role I was doing. And there was a particular business up in London that was struggling, went in there and began to sort of pick it apart and, bring the right people together in that business unit and give them something to get behind and something to be proud about. And
what do you think? Sorry to interrupt you there, but what is it about? What does a recruitment team or business unit need? Like, if you were going to couple of things like ingredients that have to be there that you're going in to look for when you're going in and assessing this, broken department or whatever. What needs to be there, do you think, for a team to be going in the right direction?
Well, in my experience, it's all about people, and it's about how they feel about the job itself.
Right.
So it's identifying people, what the issues are, and working out if you can actually fix those issues in those people and change the mental perception about the job itself. That's what it comes down to. It's then building a proper leadership team in that organization, whether it's management or directors, depending on the size of the role you have, to make sure that you are all gunning for something in particular, and that level of passion flows through the whole working team.
Right. So it's a case of saying, getting hearts and minds on board and making sure we're all bought into a shared vision. And then I imagine there's some tough decisions to be made as well, where some people won't be on that journey, and you've been brought in to make that happen.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you've got to find out if people can't be on board with you, they've got to go somewhere else and do their stuff.
Yeah.
A, because you're not particularly helping them, and B, they're certainly not helping you.
Yeah.
So that level of honesty and clarity and being able to challenge people about, look, this is what we want, this is what we're after, this is what we need from you, this is the part you play in this organization, is really, essential to get to that first of all. And once you've got the right people in the right places, the great news is there's often some opportunity for people who maybe not quite as senior, and we may be pushing them up into a higher role, but because they've got the passion and the desire to push themselves and the business forward, they're the people you elevate.
Yeah, you see it. Okay, so in 2008, where were you then when that fell apart?
So I was at that stage, I was looking after the construction professional market for central London for Hayes. And there was probably no business that was hit as hard and as quickly as that business. For instance, stuff like architecture and planning and engineering. So literally the first thing everybody does is stop building stuff, right? And those guys hit it first, yeah. So that was quite a challenging place to be. I think one of the big challenges about it is recruitment had been reasonably easy at that stage. It was a case of finding a decent candidate, getting some commitment, and just blatting them out to the marketplace and just waiting for the placement fee to arrive, right? And then suddenly it became very different. You really had to know the marketplace. You really had to have strong relationships in there. And some people couldn't make that transition at that stage. So it was pretty tough. It was a downsizing of the business at that stage, and then just really, knuckling down into the key areas where we could see opportunity for us over that coming time.
And you say at that point you felt different. What was your life like? You're 37 years old now. Like, what had you more responsibility? You must be a completely different person than you were at 25.
Massively, yeah. And something particular had happened in my life at that stage. I got married in 2004, and then in 2008, my wife gave birth to twins.
Wow!
So that was quite a challenge. So We used to have this thing where my wife would do so we'd do the feed at 2 a.m, then I'd be allowed to go in the spare room and sleep. So I could get up on the train from Brighton to London to make sure I was in the office for 8 o'clock every day. And, at that stage, who knew what the future was? And then suddenly I'm responsible for 2 extra lives in the world. So it was a challenging time.
But what when you say it changed for you in the business, what was the sign or symptoms that things were different?
Well, I think, first of all, because we didn't have that rapid growth and acceleration, which was largely due to the global financial crash. But secondly, because it just lost some of its edge. There was much more competition out there, and there wasn't this kind of electric entrepreneurial feel about the business.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of lost, okay, well, where's this go next for me? And I think all of us need that next kind of, okay, this is the challenge I'm building for. This is what I'm trying to get to now.
You carried on for another 3 years though, right? So if you were there for 15 years, that's only 12 years from 96. So you had another 3 years.
Yeah, so I then had I had a year of restructuring that business, and in 2009, an opportunity came back on the South Coast for me to pick up the education business.
Right.
Which was a really interesting time. Never done education recruitment before, but again, it was a bit of a troubled business at that stage. It needed revamping. It needed some new ideas. It needed to really sort out the people element of that business, and I went in and did it from 2009 to 2011.
Right. And that was being closer to home, I imagine, and less commuting to London. And
that was a big driver. Yeah, having the kids at that stage, that was a great time of life. Having said that, I was still out of the house really early in the morning. Though that business started, I think, at 7:30 in the morning in those days to hit the schools first thing before the academic day started.
Again, I'm doing this interview a bit random ways round, right? But like, having had the pandemic now, I think one of the things people are really passionate about is that still being able to hit all the same productivity, but being able to, see the kids for breakfast or for dinner or whatever. Like, did you miss out on a lot of those things because of the way that the recruitment industry, but most industries worked back then? It was non-negotiable. You were always on the road. You were always in meetings. You were always in physical. Like today, I don't know. Are you at home today, Dan?
I am at home today. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So we're doing this now in a remote. So I'm at home. I'm in the office this afternoon. What would you say that looking back, the time you had with your children and stuff would have been different had it been in 2022?
It would have been massively different. Yeah. I never saw my kids in the morning, and often I didn't see them in the evening. Up until fairly recently, that they're 14, they turn 14 at the weekend, so they stay up later now. But at that stage, and particularly some of the problems I've had with trains down the years, often, the most important 10 minutes of your day was just running through that door so you could read them a story before they go to bed at night.
Wow.
And that's what you did. Now, you had to make sacrifices in those days. I still think you do, really. I'm not a great believer in the work-life balance stuff, but clearly life has got better for us. And I think new parents, that kind of stuff, it's much better that you have more time with your kids.
I think what's different is the kind of working day doesn't sit in those brackets anymore like it used to. Like this morning, for example, I went for a run at 6:45. I'm back. I walked the dogs. I then saw the kids and my partner for breakfast. Always fun. Watched Man City and Real Madrid highlights because Gabriel went to bed at about 15 minutes into the game, right? And he's loving it. 4-3 we won, blah, blah, blah. Then I'm working again. And then tonight, I think I'll see them from, I think, 5:30, 6 till about 7:30. And then I've got to go and do another call, and I'll probably go back to my office because I used to do it from home where I am now, but it's just not fair because we live in this like open plan house where my office, there's one door and you can hear everything in the living space. So it just doesn't work. So I'll go back, and that wouldn't just literally would have been nuts, wouldn't it? Like you just wouldn't have done it. Like, but and the fact that I'm speaking to someone on the other side of the world because that's why it's in the US. That's why I've got an 7:30 call in LA, which again, would that have happened 20 years? I don't know. Like it was just a very different, everything was so specific back then. It's kind of just all mashed into one, I think.
Yeah, look, and I've got evidence now it's making our people more productive, this hybrid. I actually believe that you need both.
Yeah, I do.
I think you need that time at home where you can live that flexibility around your life and make sure it sits around you. And actually, some of our best recruitment's going on at 7, 8 o'clock in the evening when people can genuinely have, long conversations about their career and what they seek in the employment world. But at the same time, we need to come together. We're highly sociable people. I talked to you about the magic of personnel development in our roles. I've got to see people. That's where I get a lot of my energy from. As a leader of a business, I need to be around the people who are, doing it every day. So the hybrid way of working, I think it's much better. It comes about, the big thing was trust, wasn't it? The pandemic forced us to trust our people. And what we soon learned was that actually good people are just as productive, no matter where they are. And people who weren't going to be productive also weren't going to be productive in the office necessarily. They were constantly in the kitchen or, stupid lunch breaks, that kind of stuff. But good people do a good job because they genuinely care about the output of their role.
They want to do well. What was the catalyst then? What was the final straw with Hayes? Why did you leave?
Well, I actually got made redundant in the end. I think, which was a bit of a shock actually, because I think part of the tragedy is I'd become a bit of a lifer there and was just putting up and accepting things. My results were really good at that stage, but they went through a big transition and I got made redundant as a result of that. And that forced me to have a real kind of recalibration of my professional working life and what I wanted to be and what I was. I think I'd fallen into that trap that a lot of 40-year-olds can get into, which is, I'm part of the furniture era, I'll kind of be looked after, etc. I was probably a few pounds heavier than I should have been, and I probably lost some of that cutting edge.
As in physically pounds heavy. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you'd almost got comfortable in multiple ways, right?
Yeah, they were part of the problem, but so was I.
Yeah.
So I at the time I felt really let down by them because I'd given heart and soul for this organization through my latter 20s and through my 30s. And then it was suddenly, thanks, mate, off you go.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was part of that problem too. So that gave me the opportunity to really evaluate what I meant to the recruitment world. Was this something I still wanted to do? And the answer to that definitely was yes. So as a result of which, I just had to make some significant changes. And one of the changes I decided to make was put myself in very different situations. Rather than the kind of corporate FTSE 250 comfy chair, I wanted to be literally sitting on a razor blade at, some sharp edge recruitment.
You wanted to have a broken chair in Brighton with fags at the desk. Where the smoking ban had already kicked in.
Exactly. So I worked for a couple of much smaller companies, and that was really good because it got me front and center. It got me out there. It realized what the business was all about.
Did you go back to were you still leading people, or did you go back to actually doing some recruitment? Or
both. So really? I was leading and recruiting.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I did £15,000 in a month, and part of me thought, can you still do this? And it was like, yes, I can.
Yeah, go on.
But I needed that. It's all about relevance, isn't it? And I needed to show I could do this. I was up for the fight. I was up for the punch, and just reconstructed myself again around my values.
I'm interrupting this episode to talk about our sponsors first, okay? And our main sponsor today is Talent Ticker. And if you're looking for ways to get ahead of your talent ahead of competition in 2022, Talent Ticker is here to help. Everyone says to me, Sean, candidate short market. Like, I've literally just got off my academy today and I've had 150 recruiters tell me the candidate short market. What that means is they're spending so much time trying to find candidates and they're spending less time talking to clients, okay? Which means there's a challenge, because if the market corrects itself and turns, are you going to be aware of who are the hiring clients? And are you also getting access to the best candidates? So Talent Ticker, through the end of this month, any Hoxo listeners who request a demo of the Talent Ticker product will receive a free personalized list of leads to help them get a jump on the rest of the year. It's the first recruitment intelligence platform. It's like the Bloomberg of recruitment that provides you accurate contact information of both passive candidates and the companies looking to hire. So it gives you that predictability of when a company's been, got investment or grown to a point where they believe they'll be making hiring decisions. It'll tell you what type of roles and the contact information for the hiring manager. So it's passive candidates and the opportunities. It kind of seems a bit too good to be true. So anyone using this tool can guarantee you'll be calling the right person at the right time for the right reason. Don't wait. Go to Talent Ticker or get.talentticker.ai/Hoxo and get your leads today. Amazing. How would you describe your values then?
I need to work in an organization that cares.
Yeah.
And I think some of the issues I had where the dollar came first, the service came second, and I just couldn't do that. I think it's all about people and it's all about relationships. It's all, and that's as much true as your candidates and your clients as it is your staff.
Yeah.
It has to be consistent. It has to be, that level of integrity about doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm probably one of many people who gets deeply saddened when recruiters are tarred with a specific brush about, look, just secondhand car salesman and it's all about the dollar and all that kind of stuff. I think recruitment is a fantastic thing we give to society when we get it right. And part of the problem is we're always dealing with human beings, so we don't always get it right.
It's funny though, because you can pinpoint that to most sectors. Like my stepmom is an SEO expert. Right? She's really she's on like the European panel of SEO judges and stuff. Like she's really good at it. And I remember when I was in recruitment 6 years ago, whatever it was, five and a half years ago. And I remember towards the end, I had a chat with her, and she was like, "I just can't get on board with recruiters." Funny because a lot of her client base now are recruiters, but she can't get on board with them. They just, she just came out with this like blanket statement about how shit we were as an industry. And I said, would you agree that not every SEO person is as good as you? She's like, yeah. I was like, do you think some let people down? She's like, yeah. Do you think there's some good and bad in the industry? She's like, 100%. I was like, well, why is that not the case in recruitment? Like, I personally I'm on board. The whole point of Hoxo is to champion the good guys. Like what I want to do is I want the best recruiters to stand out on LinkedIn amongst the shit, because the shit usually won't want to put their opinions out there. They won't want to. They want to just sit there and making money at all costs. Whereas the good people want to invest in relationships, want to be seen, want to be heard, want to be recognized for. And it isn't all about money. You've nailed it there. Because I asked I've had 3,500 recruiters go through my program in a year, and I've asked every one of them on the show, on the sessions, is money your number one priority? And very small percentage say yes. Like they all say it's important and typically why they got into the job. But being the best they can be, competition and being the best is usually number one. And helping people is up there in the top three. We're not a charity, but we are genuinely making, like, it's one of the biggest decisions people make is where they work, right? And we're impacting that. It's nuts.
Absolutely, it makes such a difference. And I've personally been on the candidate end of that experience, and the difference it's made in my life is just fundamental. When you take somebody who's in a bad situation, where their talents aren't recognized, where they haven't got an opportunity to step up to the next level, and then you actually put them into that spot in a place where they are recognized and they are valued in what they do on a day-to-day basis, and they are stretched in terms of their skills and their talents. It's such a remarkable place. I spend more time working at Morgan Hunt than I do anything else. It's the thing I do most. So I have to be, enriched from this. And the money is a byproduct of doing the job properly.
Yeah.
And if you get that cart in front of that horse the wrong way around, you are in a difficult situation. And I think after a period of time, it runs away from you, and, businesses or personal careers go down the swanee.
I agree. Well, so one of the things about this show, right? It's all about growing recruitment businesses, the RAG, recruitment agency growth. And that can be any direction. It's not actually just saying you have to scale, exit, and make millions and swan off into the sunset. It can be, I want to stay one person lean. I want to be completely automated, or what. I don't really care as long as people have a vision for what they want and how they want to do it. Now, what I love about your story and why I wanted you on this show is I've had a few people on this show that are quite similar, like David Etherington, for example, who's now the CEO of Amoria Bond, ex-NP Group. never founded a company himself, but has done some unbelievable things at the helm of these organizations. So, like, first question for you is, did you ever consider starting your own? Was there ever an option at the point of Hayes, or, go and do this for myself and create the next recruitment firm?
No, I didn't. Probably it was too late when I considered doing it. And often I have a beer with a couple of my mates and gone, bloody hell, we should have done that. And we probably should. I mean, I think that late 90s period, I have to say, at that stage, I was managed by some brilliant directors at Hayes, and they could probably see some things happening, and I was picked up and I was moved to the next challenge. That was a skill set, and still is a skill set amongst the recruitment businesses, is creating the challenge before somebody goes, you know what, I'm going to create my own one.
Yeah. So that never really entered your mind, and you look back. So
I think the other thing after that, I wanted to run businesses of scale, a certain scale. And clearly, when you start your own business, you've got to that thing's got to go. And I think part of my skill is being able to communicate to large groups of people and to get, messages across.
Yeah. So tell us, how did Morgan Hunt come about?
So I found myself, I'd done this sort of sharp shock to the system in terms of where I was working. And I wasn't particularly, I'd done that stuff. I got myself billing fees. I got myself managing teams. I got back and re-engaged with the recruitment business as a whole. But I wasn't happy in the organization I was working for. And lo and behold, a recruiter phones me up out of the blue and said he was just starting a exec recruitment business and thought there were certain guys like me out there in the marketplace. And in 2013, it was a good stage for recruitment. There was a lot of sort of records being broken and businesses moving forward. And he said, look, do you fancy moving back to a bigger organization? And I said, yeah. And this is what I wanted. I was very clear about sort of organization I wanted to work for. And I then started what turned out to be a very long recruitment process with Morgan Hunt. And I met the guys there, and I just believed in what that organization was all about. There is something in the bricks at Morgan Hunt, which probably comes down to the fact that it was started by two brothers. It feels like family. It's entrepreneurial, but they just want to do it properly. All the things we've just been talking about, I resonated with this organization. And lo and behold, I find myself doing another turnaround.
So how long did that take to get the job? You said it was a long process.
I think it was 6 months in total. And I think there was some complications with staff members coming and going around that who'd recruited me. And then suddenly it moved very quickly. And I remember I'd gone in for a kind of meet the team type day, and I got whisked away by Rupert Fordham, who is one of the owners of Morgan Hunt. And he said, that MD who recruited you is no longer here. Meet the new MD. Fortunately, I've met that individual who's Sue Cooper, who a number of people in the industry will know, brilliant lady. And I worked with Sue for a number of years there.
What job did you come in to do?
It was construction and their property and engineering sector, which was the kind of, it was the poor performing element of the business. Right. So once again, it was weed out the wrong uns, elevate the people who are really good and talented, build a vision around the business, and drive it forward with energy.
What do you spend your day doing in a role like that? Like, is it literally just one-on-ones with people all day? Like, because you wouldn't, I imagine you don't deal much with customers. Like, would you get involved in any client-facing work, or is it all just engaging with the people?
Yeah, no, you've got to do everything, because you've got to get your head around it. You've got to understand it. Every recruitment business is unique to a certain extent, so you've got to engage. And there's a lot of one-to-ones at that stage, but there's also going out to meet the clients as well, because they want to know what they think about your business and how they understand what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. That was really important. And actually, one of the great things about Morgan Hunt is I wasn't used to the kind of warm reception we received from the public sector about Morgan Hunt as an entity.
So the feedback was positive?
Yeah, basically because they've always wanted to do the job properly and do it well. And that ethos throws across everything that Morgan Hunt does.
Where were they going wrong?
It was just that they'd lost direction, and they'd had the wrong people, and the culture was being controlled by people who had a negative slant on the business or their particular lot. And this is a kind of self-fulfilling loop system, isn't it? When you get people who have become negative about stuff. So you've got to give them the chance to improve it. And if it's not going to improve, you've got to make pretty quick action in terms of turning it around and get the right people in.
And when you follow, because if someone's been in a business for 2 years or more and they're quite senior, it's not as easy as just saying, especially if you need that role, like you can't just let them go and then rehire someone. You've got to go through a process, right? And think about, there's quite a long process around HR to put, performance management reviews in place, et cetera, I imagine.
There is that. I also think brutal honesty is pretty good, and look, why do you feel about this? Okay, can we correct it? And actually having really honest conversations where it becomes a mutual decision in the best, not in some kind of, quick HR situation, but being really honest about what you expect, what success looks like in this organization, and what it would take from that individual to manifest that level of success in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis is really important.
Yeah.
Rather than hiding behind HR processes, which clearly at some point have got to come in certain circumstances, but it's always much better just to level with people.
Right. So you come into that, and how long did you spend as was it regional director or? Yeah,
I was a sort of divisional director in there, and I did that for sort of, I think probably an 18-month period before I was promoted to director. I kept on picking up other parts of the business, which potentially weren't quite the level I wanted them to be. Had a great sort of young junior management team around me who were inspirational, and to me as much as the staff who worked for them. And we just really started to move forward in the world. We then hit austerity. I don't know if you remember back then, but we had a coalition government, and there was talk of potentially another coalition government, which I think was either 2014 or 2015. And then suddenly David Cameron came in with a huge majority, and then really wreaked sort of austerity down on the public sector, which was another of those sort of buffers that you hit in recruitment life. And it was, how do we reshape? How do we focus to move forward?
And what impact did that have?
Well, it hit a number of our sectors quite hard. There was a lot of rate negotiation across the business. Frameworks were becoming more and more prevalent within the sectors, and also managed service wins and losses for us in some cases, and wins in others, were really sort of dictating the performance of the business. So we just had to navigate a path through that and make sure that we're investing in the right areas and sort of controlling expenditure where necessary.
What are the levers if you're running a division? Obviously you can't be in the detail of every team and every person's desk. So what are the levers as right at the top of that tree? What are the daily or weekly levers, KPIs are you tracking to know that things are moving in the right direction?
Well, if you're me, for instance, you need a really good relationship with your CFO. I'm really fortunate to have a brilliant CFO now. So he's pretty good at actually just sticking the right numbers in front of me from a financial point of view. And then from a KPI point of view, you have a constant touch on, where your temp working's at, number of interviews you've got on perm placements, etc. And then the supportive work that goes into delivering those figures.
Right.
That's important. The next thing is you need really good communication. It's all about your direct team around you and getting honesty and openness from those people. What you don't want are individuals who are going to, paint a picture for you which isn't representative of the truth. You need real honesty about what's going on so you can quickly dive in and, take the appropriate action.
Right. So how did the promotion to the MD come about?
So Sue Cooper said that she was going off to retire. And we initially came in as two joint managing directors into the business. Two joint managing directors were appointed, which was probably a bit top heavy and a bit clunky. Yeah. And then I went on to run the business after that. So
how was that parallel run where you worked together? What was the benefit of that from your perspective?
Well, I think it was a big step up in taking on the whole business. So having two of us sort of break the business down in half and then coming together to agree a joint strategy, I guess that was the sense behind it. I worked with somebody who was great, but ultimately I think businesses need a single voice and a clear direction about where they're going. The other thing is you need to make things clean for people in terms of messaging, and I think if there's too many voices involved, it can become confusing.
Yeah. So when was it that you took over the helm?
So that would have been, 2018.
Right. So you had couple of years before the pandemic. So tell us, where were you going into in terms of size of company, and what was different about the company going into the pandemic?
Okay, so I'm really fortunate that I work for a brilliant ownership structure. There are two gentlemen, Rupert Fordham and Hugh Willis, who own the company, the largest shareholders, and they want us to build a brilliant recruitment business. So there's this alignment. We don't have, I mean, whilst it's a fiercely, what's the word I'm looking for? It's fiercely corporate in terms of this needs to be a profit-making business that drives forward. We want to get it right. And there was a certain amount of investment that was going into the business at that stage, which allowed us to do a number of things. First of all, open up a business in Scotland, which over the last sort of 2.5 years, despite the majority of that being in the pandemic, has been hugely successful for us. And we're making really good strides in Scotland. And also for a public sector business with a lot of very loyal clients, they were giving all their vacancies. And then when it came to IT, we were having to recommend other agencies to give them to. So we actually built an IT business at long last within the organisation, which is essential for a business like ours moving forward. The final piece is we pulled a great director team together, working with my chairman, who's the guy who got me into recruitment back in 1996, a guy called Darren Montague, who was a guy I sort of managed to pull into the business. We kind of went through our little black books and hooked up with a load of people who we'd worked with historically and built this brilliant director team that the business now has the luxury of working with.
Like a board? You mean a board? Or
Yeah.
So how often do you guys get together?
Well, I was with him last night, which is possibly why I got a couple of bags under my eyes. So we speak most working days, and then we come together probably a couple of times a month to go through what's going on, etc. And it's just really useful that there's somebody where I can have an honest conversation, and break down in tears in front of them, that kind of stuff.
Well, it is important, because I think when you are the top of a business, people always look up to you for answers, right? Decision is why you're there, like ultimate decision and support. But you've got to have that yourself, otherwise where do you go to? So that's how many people are on the board?
So there's a team of 6 directors underneath us. There's an exec team, which is Darren as the chairman, Keith Widdowson as the CFO, and myself. And the board is the 6 directors underneath.
Right. But it sounds like a really nice structure. So going into the pandemic, you'd already made those changes. You'd built the tech, the Scotland, and the team, and then you was everyone operating in the office 5 days, and was it classic in its style?
Classic old school recruitment, suits, the whole lot. And then suddenly the pandemic comes around, and there is a comfort blanket which that old school structure provides. You can see everybody working, all that kind of stuff. There's a level of comfort in it. And suddenly we all find ourselves at our kitchen tables, in our spare rooms, all that kind of stuff. And you talk about having somebody to talk to through those difficult times. That was the moment when I really needed it, because it was so different to what we'd done. I'm forever grateful for our IT department that literally switched the thing overnight, and the business within sort of 48 hours was completely operative from everybody's homes up and down the country.
And did you have what's the sort of average age demographic across the recruiters in the team?
Probably sort of 26, 27, that sort of area. We sit normally from a recruitment point of view between that 25 to 35 group.
Yeah. And did you have a lot of people that struggled in terms of, sharing flats, working on kitchen tables and end of beds and things like that?
Yeah. I've got to be honest, I struggled a bit as well, because again, where do we find our energy? It's that human interaction, and it's harder through screens. I think we've got a bit more adept at it at the time. One of the things I regularly do is hold what we call a company address, where London's obviously our biggest office. We get everybody there. We get the other regional offices on the screens, and I will talk to them about where the company's going, performances, which have been of, outstanding level, and just what's happening within the business. And that's where you look into people's eyes and you understand if they're with you or not. And then suddenly you're in a room on your own and everybody's kind of dialing in and internet connections are failing. I found it quite difficult, but we got through it. We did it. And now we're in this kind of new way of working. I'm proud of us all that we realized that hybrid was the way forward pretty early on. And we managed to do something in terms of downsizing all the office properties we had in an 18-month period, which has been a hugely beneficial.
Well, how is it? How is the structure now? How do you manage it so that it's productive and you get that right, that balance?
Well, the first thing is you hire the right people and you retain the right people and you cover them in trust. And that's where we are with people. And ultimately, recruiters do have a fee line that comes out every month and you can see who's doing the job and who's not. But secondly, the next bit is about communication and making sure there is regular, contact with individuals, that, goals are being set, problems are being dealt with, and there's that communication around everything we do.
But in terms of the hybrid, what's the model? Like, if you got rules around it, for example, how are you making it work?
So we initially spent a lot of time building these rules, and then we realized that as lockdown after lockdown came in, we realized that rules were just pointless. People have been effectively working from home for 18 months, and now you're going to impose some structure on them about when and where they should be in the office. And it was just crazy. Now, I actually think for personal health, you need to be in the office at least 2 days a week. I think that's good. And we've got some people in the office 5 days a week, either because it's where they are most productive for them personally, or they don't have a situation where they can work properly at home. We've also got some people who are very rarely in the office now, may come in once a month just for that touch point, like one-to-one with their manager or their director.
Well, the interesting thing is, even if people are in the office, it's almost still got to be on video, hasn't it? Like you've still got to do a lot of your team meetings on video, even if 3 people are in, because there's always a chance people won't be. If you have one day everyone's in, brilliant. But reality is most people are sat on their headsets or whatever, dotted around, even if they're in there.
Yeah. We invested in sort of special teams rooms where you get that kind of as seamless as you can get it. Ultimately, somebody's on the screen and somebody's in person, right? But yeah, you're right. A lot of those meetings are hybrid.
And do you ever get a point where there'll be too many people coming in and you downsize so much it's an issue?
Well, potentially we might have to ration it, or we'll get people booking seats. Right now, it's not an issue. Having said that, we're actually having to upsize our Manchester office with some of the stuff that's going on there, and they're really keen to get back in. And the social element of that is driving a lot of it. They want to be around their mates.
Yeah. So if you look back at your career then, and where you're heading now, like, how would you summarize that? Or I call it an intrapreneur rather than an entrepreneur. How would you summarize that journey for, like, why should other people think about it as an option? Because I'm guilty of being one of the guys that promotes entrepreneurship a lot, and people, I think a lot of recruiters feel that's their only way. Like, if you were to talk to people that were maybe in management roles that are thinking, I want to have a really good career and I want to make a lot of money but I'm not sure I want to go, like, I don't know if I want to be in my underpants launching a company, or I want to take that risk to do it. I don't know if I want to be an entrepreneur. What's that journey like? Why should people consider this as another option?
I think it's about scale, largely. And recruitment for me is a bit like a steeplechase. There's just this kind of endless number of jumps and hurdles that you've got to get over. And you are just starting at a different space to the guy who's doing his own thing, right? You've still got to get over a load of hurdles. But in my current working role, a lot of those hurdles have already been crossed. Doesn't mean we've got a load more ahead of us, because we have. And in this world that seems, to be continually disrupted. I mean, we're all coming out of the pandemic, bit of clear water ahead of us. This is going to be great. Then lo and behold, we've got Ukraine kicking off. Yeah. We've got the cost of living. We've got inflation at an all-time high. I think that particularly as an issue is a challenge for business leaders and business owners right now, and something that I've never had to deal with in my sort of 26 years of recruitment experience. That's a new one on us. We're going to have to get our heads around that and work out what that means to everybody. But it's about that scale piece. Now, ultimately, I'm an entrepreneur. I see myself as an entrepreneur because the owners of Morgan Hunt give me the opportunity to head that business up. And it's me coming up with the plans. It's me having to report back and to make sure that things profitable and the thing is driven forward and we're hitting our financial goals and the business itself is building to be in the spot that everybody wants it to be in. So I still have all that responsibility. I'm just doing it probably with more people around me. And I need to be part of a team. You know, apart from playing drums, the other passion that's run through my life was cricket. Played a lot of cricket as a kid and as a young adult. And I love that team environment.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be part of that.
Yeah, it makes sense. Where are you heading then? So what is the vision for Morgan Hunt? What are you trying to spearhead for the owners and for everyone else?
Well, I think we know what we want to be, which is, you know, the UK's leading public sector recruitment business. And I think in certain of our niches, we are the leading recruitment business in that area. I think we really got together and some of the stuff we talked about doing the job properly is really crucial to us. Morgan Hunt, inspiring working lives is our tagline, you know, and we genuinely want to, you know, get rid of some of the social stigma that revolves around recruitment businesses and show that we make a difference in doing our job really well. So that's the sort of key issue for us, is how can we drive that, become better and better at what we do, making sure that our candidates feel they're in a much better working environment, mainly to the thanks of Morgan Hunt finding them that opportunity, and our clients' organisations are enriched and improved by us finding the right people in talent short markets for them.
Yeah. So have you got like a destination headline numbers or headcount or revenue that means you've achieved at least phase one of this vision or horizon one?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts of it. There's a financial plan that stretches over the next 5 years for the business where we want to take it. We believe that we've got the leadership teams into delivering that plans, and you know what it's like, you know, you set these financial targets out and then the world comes along and whacks you one way and the other, and it's being fleet of foot, you know, to be able to adapt the strategies to make sure you're still getting where you want to get with it. So the financial plan is part of it, but secondly is this deep dive at ourselves and this constant sort of understanding of where we sit in the marketplace and what we mean to everybody to make sure that we are delivering the ethos of the business we want to be.
Yeah. What would you say, like public sector, I imagine held up pretty well in the pandemic. I imagine that, you know, there might have been areas that didn't, but I think, you know, of all the sectors, it would have been pretty strong, right? So am I right in believing that it stayed quite consistent even despite economic conditions?
Right. So we had some markets that excelled. So clearly the stuff we do in the NHS, which is not doctors and nurses, it's around the other supportive stuff, a lot of maintenance stuff, a lot of facilities management stuff in the NHS, that went crazy. Social care went really big for us over that period of time, but other areas really didn't. So the central London, central government piece really shut up shop very quickly. What else fell over? All our perm business kind of stopped almost instantly. We do a lot of businesses with colleges across the UK. That's our education stream. That almost came to a standstill as people went to remote learning and realised instead of having 15 to 30 kids in a class, they could have 100.
Yeah, that makes sense. In reason I asked that though is like the market has been absolutely nuts for about, I'd say 12 months at least, where record month after record month, you know, I'm talking every day I'm on my academy, I ask people, what's the market like? And I get busy, crazy, nuts, like, you know, and I'll specifically ask questions around candidate flow and client flow. And everyone's telling me the jobs are coming out of every angle and the candidates are harder to find. And is it two parts to this question? Is it the same in your world? And do you see it correcting itself at some point soon? Do you see there being a change in that respect?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, public sector businesses don't tend to get the great lows. So if you look at exactly, or the kind of level of highs, you know, I mean, there's this kind of switch on, switch off. I know with a lot of mates who work in private sector focused businesses. So we didn't quite have that kind of loss of business. We also didn't have the step up that some organisations have had. That said, all our consultants now are job heavy. And I think in that there is a concern because suddenly you start to lose your client relationships because you're so focused on trying to find a candidate and just get them out and get the placement sorted. Now, I've given up, you know, guessing what the future holds for us. But I do think there's a good chance we're going to see a recession in the next few months in this country, and then we're going to see that change. As a public sector business, that normally puts us in a good spot because our businesses tend to keep on going or actually step up a level to deal with some of the societal demands on the departments and organisations we recruit for. That said, if we're not close to our clients through this period, we can't expect them to be close on the other side. And what tends to happen in recessions is the private sector boys try and muscle in on our turf, etc. So you've got to make sure you're holding up those relationships throughout. But I do think it's going to be an interesting 12 months for the recruitment business. And sadly, this kind of nice, clear stretch of water we'd all hoped for when we came out of the pandemic may be somewhat curtailed by the stuff that's going on around the world. Yeah,
I agree. But it does seem at the moment there's not many signs of it slowing down right now. It seems pretty hectic. What's your biggest problem right now as the MD of such a big? What's your biggest headache? If you had to pick one thing anything that's a challenge right now.
Well, I think it's two things. I think my biggest strength and my biggest joy is our people, and my biggest headache is my people, because they're all getting squashed under the cost of living stuff as well. And it's constantly, we know the clamour for talent in the marketplace. We also know that our competitors look at Morgan Hunt and they see people as well trained and well orientated, and people who succeed in Morgan Hunt are normally, excellent candidates. So there's a lot of pressure around those people. But we've got to keep, strong with our values, make sure we're looking after our people. We've got to make sure that we're offering the very best sort of environment for them to excel in. And that's part of, articulating the vision for Morgan Hunt and where we're going as a business and where their careers can go on the back of that.
I like it. And finally, you mentioned in the Hayes days, you got a bit fat in different ways. What's your route? What's your kind of a bit outside of work now, but what's your strategy around keeping fit mentally, physically, having a great relationship at home, family, friends? Take the work to one side. It's a huge part of your life, but how do you balance the other things? What's your approach or a values vision towards that?
Well, I don't agree with this word balance. I don't think you can have a role like mine and have balance as such. I think what you've got to do is be mindful of the time you have with family and friends and make sure you are utilizing that to the best possible niche.
Right.
My wife might tend to disagree with that sometimes in terms of my ability to handle that. But the job is this it's this focus of this stuff. Often I can just find myself drifting off at the dinner table because there's a problem or an issue at work that I've got to control. So I think the first thing is almost trying to find the off button. And there comes a point in the evening where you've got to drop it. I make sure I'm not on devices after 8 o'clock in the evening, and I won't pick it up until the following morning, etc. Because for me, sleep has increasingly become a key component in my life. That's caused me to really reduce the amount of drinking I used to do. I used to have, and particularly during the pandemic, there wasn't much else to do. So you'd have a couple of beers after work, some kind of joy, but I've knocked that on the head. I'll have a drink 1 or 2 nights a week, mainly because it protects my sleep. And I know if I haven't drunk anything, I sleep a lot better. I think one of the big things I give in my role is energy. And if I haven't slept properly, that becomes more and more testing. So I've got to be able to function at a high level, which is all about protecting my sleep. What I consume is really important. I think the next thing is I engage in some serious hobbies. So I do play the drums. I've told you the last couple of Saturday nights I've been out gigging. When you play the drums, you cannot be thinking about anything else.
No.
There's a meditative state about it, which you get into, and you are playing the drums and you are completely in the moment with what you are doing with the fellow musicians around you. Yeah. And that is usually beneficial to me. And then when you're with the family, you've got to make the most of it. You've got to, I bully my kids out onto those country walks because I know if I'm walking with them in the open air, they'll start talking to me. And some of their troubles and issues and concerns and stuff they're excited about and what they're thinking about will all come out in those environments. So that's really important to me too.
Lovely. Dan, I could talk to you all day about this stuff. I love it. You've clearly had an amazing career. I think that intrapreneur piece The way you position that is, you're doing the same thing, just starting at a different point. I think I've never thought of it that way, which I think's really useful. I think there'll be a lot of people that will really value this episode and can learn from it. And again, you're just shining the light of positivity on the sector, which is what I'm all about. I just don't believe in adding more negative press and shit to the world. And this industry has given a lot to myself, to you, to many others, and I hope plenty of people listen and think, you know what, I want to do something similar. If anyone does want to reach out, if anyone's listened and thought not interested in working for Morgan Hunt or anything, just honestly, you've got the job or the career that I want. Would you be open to giving them some time and having a chat?
100%. You've got to pay back what you've taken out of this business. All those people who were so fundamental to shaping my career, particularly in those early days, and actually the people I work with now are a big part of that. You've got to give something back. So more than happy if anybody gets in touch with me through LinkedIn or emails me at dan.taylor@morganhunt.com. I will happily do my best to try and come back to them and help them out.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure people will take you up on that. Dan, we'll get you back on in the future. We'll bring you back on and see how you're realizing this dream of Morgan Hunt's growth. But take care of yourself and we'll see you soon.
Great to talk to you, Sean. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, as always, for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. Tune in again next week. That's live on LinkedIn. I'll see you soon.